The Cleveland Cavaliers select Evan Mobley.
Has been a historical franchise in this league for years.
We have a trade to announce. The Boston Celtics select Jason Tatum.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We took a little day off yesterday to rest up a bit because we know the trade deadline's coming up and the slow news days are going to be few and far between. So today we are back at it. We've got a lot more to get into. Some stuff on Ben Simmons, some stuff on Lonzo Ball, a weird situation with David Vanderpool. We'll talk about that. Lots of stuff to break down. Joining me is Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me at Trevor_Lane. Keith, I guess we should start with Ben Simmons. Daryl Morey gave us just a little bit of information, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He gave a interview, not completely uncommon for I believe his title is now president of basketball operations, but a decision maker to go and give an interview to the media, and in it he talked a whole lot of things. One of the things that was funny is something we were talking about before we get started, where he's like, this one place you reported this and it was called Ballsack Sports, and he's like, and everybody ran with it, and that part's just as funny. And maybe we'll get into that whole nonsense of this time of year a little bit later, but the big takeaways were he's basically talked to every team in the league about Ben Simmons. He said that there is a deal that could, or how did he phrase it? There are probably deals with the Kings that work, but it would probably need to involve a third team versus a straight deal. What was interesting is you rarely ever hear anything like that, where it's like, oh yeah, there's a deal out there with that team that probably works. Like that is so uncommon. But yeah, I mean, that's what he said. And then he also kind of finished it off with, but don't expect anything until right around the deadline, which is just more, he's been down this path several times and knows generally it's, when you get into deadline week, which is still a couple weeks away. And also that, if this has to, it'll go into next year and or next summer and the off season and go from there. So kind of a non-update except for that Kings thing, which was kind of wild.
Here's what I think this is, because Daryl Morey's not stupid. Far from it. He's not going to say something without a reason for saying it. So by saying, yeah, I think there's something here with the Kings, that tells every other team that's interested in Ben Simmons, hey, the Kings have a deal that could make sense for them. If you want him, you'd better up that offer. He also added in that it's less likely than likely that a deal gets done by the trade deadline. Basically, he did everything he could here to increase his leverage in this situation. Sure. Hey, we don't, and of course he should. We don't have to trade him by the trade deadline. There's no urgency here on our part unless we're getting exactly what we want. We're just going to keep him. We're good. Whether or not that's how they actually feel, that is, of course, the right tone for a general manager to take. Absolutely. So that's just kind of, it's the game within the game here that's being played out right now that we see go on every time this time of year comes around.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things he was asked about was do you have to add something to Joel Embiid, or are you wasting the season of Joel Embiid? And I'm very much paraphrasing, so please don't jump on us if we're getting the quotes a little bit wrong. But he basically said, no, like we like what we have. We think we're doing pretty good. And you know what? He's not wrong. They're 26-18. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They are now 2.5 games out of first in the East. The East is just so tight. 1 through 6 is a 2.5 game difference between Chicago and Cleveland. And then you've got a couple teams behind that. If the Hornets have played better as of late, they're 7-3 in their last 10. And then if any one from the Washington, Boston, Toronto, New York group ever kind of pulls their heads out of their rear ends, they could probably start climbing up the standings too. So yeah, it's just, I mean, it is super condensed and packed there. And I think what's really interesting is that you can look at that two ways. You can say, we don't need to do anything. We're already pretty good. Where there's no reason to rush this. Or you can look at it and say, Well, if you're already this good and in this good a place, what if you go replace that 0 you get from Simmons every day with something? Would you jump up the standings even more? And that's the kind of back and forth. And that's the conversation that's playing out in Philly's front office. I don't know who, because I would never say who, but I know there's someone in that front office who every day when they meet as a staff is like, we got to do it. We got to trade them. We got to go get what we can to go all in, because you don't want a bunch of people that sit around and have the exact same ideas, because then you get groupthink and that's not productive.
The echo chamber.
Yeah. And then there's people on the other side saying, we can be patient. We don't need to do this. And, and that's how it's playing out right now. So long story short, don't expect a Ben Simmons Woj bomb in the next week here. Probably, if anything, it's going to go right down to deadline week.
Especially if Morey feels fairly confident that, hey, maybe, if we decide that we want to go this route, there's a Kings deal out there that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. That deal's not going to go anywhere in the next 2 weeks or whatever. He can sit back and say, all right, let's see what else comes in. And then if we decide that we definitely want to trade him, all right, then maybe we do this Kings thing, or maybe the Kings up their offer, whatever. Let's see how this plays out as we get closer to the deadline. And that's where we could get a pretty exciting February 10th, which would be good for you and me.
Yeah, we'll have the Simmons siren ready to go.
That's right.
When a Simmons trade goes down, or there's even a real quality rumor. We will sound the Simmons siren long and loud, but we're just not there. Not yet.
Not yet. Lonzo Ball, arthroscopic surgery on his knee, out 6 to 8 weeks. What is Chicago? There's so much fun this season. They've been so great, but still just getting hammered by these injuries. So Lonzo is now out for a while. He's been a major piece for them now that he's got his 3-point shot down. That's starting to fall with regularity. And now he's going to be out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's a big blow. That's a big blow for the Chicago Bulls.
Absolutely, yeah, and they're without Zach LaVine. We don't have a timeline on LaVine. Most we have at this point is it's not serious, his knee injury, but we don't know when he'll be back. They just got Alex Caruso back, just over the last couple of games. So, I mean, they're hanging in. They're still percentage points ahead of Miami for the first seed in the East. So that's good, but they're starting to slip. The defense is starting to slip. They're down to 20th using Basketball References, version of defensive rating. Offense is great, 4th in the league. That will probably, if LaVine's out for more than another week or so, that'll probably slide a little bit. But I think they still stay top 10 with the way DeRozan and Vooch and the rest of the guys. And the young guards, I mean, Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White are playing awesome for these guys. So that is the one kind of plus. But defensively, it's been tough, because where they were making a lot of hay was when they were closing games or playing key minutes with Vooch, DeRozan, LaVine, and then putting Ball and Caruso out there as kind of the perimeter duo and saying, go, wreak havoc. And those two guys, good size, they're quick, they're both fairly strong, they have good length. So that really allows them to protect Vooch, because how you protect Vooch is you just don't let guys get to him. You don't get beat on the perimeter. That's how you can get away with him out there. So the other thing is their net rating has started to drop off too. They're plus 2.4 now, and that's also a little tough to exactly where is that going to go. So just signs of cracks here for the Bulls. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but the East is so compact. You have a rough week or two, you could all of a sudden slide down in the standings several spots.
But here's the thing, though. If you're the Chicago Bulls, there's nothing you can do about Lonzo, right? 6 to 8 weeks, that's the timeline. It's not like you can rush him back or whatever. Zach LaVine, if I'm the Bulls, I'm not worried so much about what's happening right now. I'm not worried so much about 5-5 in their last 10 or any of that kind of stuff. They've shown that when they're healthy, they are one of, if not the best teams in the conference. Great. Now, if you drop to second, you drop to third, you drop to fourth, okay. That's not ideal. Ideally, you'd love to have home court advantage throughout the playoffs, but the most important thing is that you're healthy. And when you've got an explosive, violent athlete like Zach LaVine, who jumps in the air with just this insane bounce, you got to be careful with knee stuff, because he goes up, he comes down with so much force. If you are not careful with a knee injury, you could turn it into something that becomes much, much worse. So if I'm the Bulls, I'm being overly cautious with Zach LaVine right now. I would sacrifice dropping in the standings a little bit if it means a healthy Zach LaVine come playoff time.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, you're not going to rush these guys back. There was reporting yesterday that Lonzo was considering playing through this meniscus tear that he has too, and ultimately they decided, no, let's get this cleaned up and go. And that's 100% the right decision.
Yeah.
Whenever anybody plays through those, I get it if it's game 6 or 7 of the conference finals, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna gut this out. Like, that's different. But if it is like we have roughly half a season to play, like, no way. And by all accounts, he should be back before the end of the regular season. It'll be about probably closer. Reading all the stuff I've read, it's generally closer to the 8 weeks than it is the 6. Even if 6 weeks is when he's kind of cleared, it'll take a couple weeks then to get ramped back up. But yeah, that's the right decision. Right decision to be cautious with LaVine. I do wonder if this changes their kind of calculus going into the deadline. Are you looking a little different now and saying, all right, let's really make this run? And I said this on the Spot Track podcast today that we recorded this morning. I don't think there's a team in the East that should be making a go for it move more than Chicago. I think you're really, really close. I get it. Patrick Williams and Kobe White are fun young players, but man, if you can really push in and go get Harrison Barnes or Jeremy Grant, go get one of those guys and really, because at that point you might have launched yourself into being the favorites in the conference. And I don't know how many great years you're going to get out of DeRozan the rest of the way, and how many more really good, solid, productive years are going to be with Vooch and all these other things. I'm a big fan of when you're truly close, push in and go for it and really make a run.
Absolutely. And where the Bulls have been in the past however long, right? I mean, almost since Michael Jordan retired, right?
Sure.
The first time was where the Bulls have been since that, to give Bulls fans a shot at a championship, or my goodness, maybe even a championship. Maybe at the end of this, they're the ones hoisting the trophy. That would be a, well, pun intended, unforgettable season, right? I mean, and to have this opportunity in front of them, I don't think many people were projecting. We thought the Bulls would be better, but I don't think many of us were projecting they could be perhaps even a title favorite this year. And when you have that opportunity in front of you, you take it. You don't let this slide. So I would actually be surprised if we don't see the Bulls, at the very least, do everything they can to pull off something here by the trade deadline.
Yeah, in the spirit of self-accountability here, I had the Bulls 9th in the East. I was not bought in to what they did this offseason. So they were, as I'm glancing very quickly through this, the Bulls and the Lakers were the two teams I was most wrong on. The Lakers, I don't really feel bad for. Opposite reasons, exactly. I don't really feel all that bad about the Lakers because I think a lot of us were wrong on them. But the Bulls, I mean, that was a miss on my part. I didn't buy into it. I didn't think it was going to fit, and here they are. So it's absolutely load up, go for it, chase it down. Do what you got to do because it's just, you don't know. You can't go into this saying, all right, we've got a window here of 4 years, or anything like that. It doesn't work that way. It never ends up going that way unless you're, and even I was going to say, unless you're a super young team that's got all these pieces. But look at the Celtics, right? We would have said a few years ago, man, they just started that window when they made that East Finals when Jason Tatum was a rookie. We would have said, well, that's it. I mean, LeBron's out of the East now. They're going to run the East for the next several years. And I mean, they made it back to the conference finals again a couple years ago, but now it's starting to go sideways and doesn't look as good. So if you're close, go for it. That's always my opinion on that.
With shorter contracts and player movement the way it is, there's never a guarantee that tomorrow is going to bring the championship that you don't get today. So something you got to go for when you have the opportunity.
Absolutely.
The Denver Nuggets did free up a roster spot in their recent trade. However, and that got them Bryn Forbes. However, they have signed DeMarcus Cousins on a 10-day. So they're keeping that open roster spot right now. Maybe eventually Boogie gets that, but Boogie Cousins is signing a 10-day contract with the Denver Nuggets. See if he can stick there. Did show some things with the Milwaukee Bucks this season. So solid, low risk move for the Nuggets.
Yeah, and they put a lot on Nikola Jokic. kind of by design that they had to, just with no Jamal Murray and then
Mm-hmm.
Michael Porter Jr. going down. But their backups, Jermichael Green's been out for a little bit now. Jeff Green is having to play more than I think they're comfortable with at this point in his career. And then Zeke Naji has had moments, second-year player behind them, but you just want one more guy. And if Cousins can come in and give you 10, 15 minutes a night where Jokic can get a little bit of a breather, that's great. That'll help preserve him as they go. And I mean, and it's, I get it though. If you're Michael Malone, it's going to be hard to take Jokic off the floor because he's just so good. I mean, he was great last year when he won the MVP, and he might be having an even better season this year. I mean, he's been that good, but yeah, I mean, and you're right. Do it as a 10-day, kind of keep your flexibility, see what comes, and go from there. It's like not to be rude towards DeMarcus Cousins, but teams weren't exactly jumping at the chance to sign him, or he would have been signed by now. So this is a good opportunity to good for him, see if he can stick, and good for the Nuggets to keep that flexibility.
Exactly. Similar to the reason why the Lakers have kept Stanley Johnson on a 10-day contract.
Yep.
It may end up not being needed. It may be that the opportunity to use that extra roster spot to take on a salary in a trade or whatever it is that you're going to do with it just never appears. But unless you keep that flexibility, then you don't have the possibility of that being out there. And so who knows what's going to fall into their laps in the next 10 days. So might as well keep him on a 10-day contract for now. And then when the time comes, if you still have that open roster spot, you still want him, cool. There you go. David Vanterpool. Did you see this, Keith?
I did see
the
this.
Coaches getting involved. This is a little bit like, it reminds me of the Jason Kidd hit me moment when he's holding the drink.
A little bit
In terms of a coach kind of doing something a little shady, but kind of the opposite here, because he actually made himself an extra defender while he's on the sidelines. I believe the pass was going to Kyle Kuzma into the corner, and Vanterpool,
it was either going to him or he threw
from
it.
It was one or the other. Yeah. It was late one night when I was watching this, but he reaches out and hits the ball, and now the Nets and Vanterpool have been fined as a result. I've seen though some Wizards fans saying that the fine was not enough, that this was not enough for a coach getting involved in the play, particularly because the referees didn't catch it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean,
was it 25 and 10? I think.
Yeah, it was 25 to the organization, 10 to Vanterpool. Fines in the NBA are largely kind of pre-described, like they're called out, and whether it be the CBA, some stuff lists what the fines or amounts are, like for technical fouls, ejections, things like that, and then other things where this is not obviously a CBA thing because this is a coach and an organization. It's called out in the operations manual, so it's sometimes it'll be, I can't believe they did this, but if you look, $25K is about the max a team gets fined for an offense. That's not something that's like under the table, salary cap circumvention, like
Joe
that
Smith
becomes a bigger thing, or the whole stuff that went on with the Bulls and the Heat with the tampering this off season, all that kind of stuff. Those are different, right? And that's where the commissioner has some power to do what he needs to. But yeah, I mean, the reality, people have said, well, what would have happened if the refs did see it? Well, it's a technical foul because it's bench interfering with play. So it would have been a technical foul. Washington would have got a shot and would have got the ball back. The refs didn't see it. I don't really know how they missed it.
Yeah.
I get it. Stuff, the corner there gets kind of tight. It will be funny now to see the Nets next game. Like, are they all like going to be like glued to their seats, not standing up at all?
Right.
Are they going to move Vanterpool behind the bench or something, and say, hey, you're going to sit in the second row of assistants? So that would be just kind of funny. But it's I mean, it's unfortunate. And it's something where the league a couple years ago, remember it used to be guys would shoot a corner three, and if it was in front of the opposing bench, they'd stomp on the floor and clap and yell and scream and all that stuff. The league has tried to crack down on like, hey, knock it off. And the last season and a half, it wasn't as bad because you had the spread out benches. You had the guys, did sometimes 2-3 deep rows on the bench. So it looked very different. Even in the bubble, it was almost like there was like the hockey boards, there that they were all behind. So it didn't end up looking the same way with that. But yeah, it's I mean, I don't know. I get why Wizards fans are angry. I'll also say this because I've seen someone like, it costs us the game. it happened with almost 6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. It didn't
Yeah.
cost you the game. Make another basket, make another play. I mean, let's get real about that.
Yeah, I don't think like if this was Wizards are down one and the ball's being swung for a wide open shot
Yeah.
in the corner, and there's 3 seconds left. Okay, maybe,
Completely
right? But
different.
I
Sure.
don't think you can look at this as this cost you the game. But sure, ultimately, maybe that play could have. Maybe it's possible. Maybe Kuzma or whoever was shooting there would have hit that shot, and the whole game would have swung in the Wizards' favor. And maybe, okay,
Semi-related. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, I actually missed a game winner. From it was about a 15-footer on the baseline, and I missed, and I was just destroyed. Like, I was so upset. And it was one of the few games. My dad traveled for a living, so he wasn't always able to be at my games. And there was one of the few games he was at, and I just was, just ruined. I was so upset. And I'll never forget him saying, "Hey, remember when this other kid on the team missed that jump shot? Remember when this guy missed that free throw?" And I'm like, "Yeah, and he goes, "Well, if they'd made it, your shot wouldn't have mattered." And it was just his way of being like, "Hey, it's never one person's,
Right.
it's never one play." Like, and now that's true. I get it when it's like you miss a wide open layup to win the game. Like, that's different, right? Then you can kind of say like, "Oof, that was bad." But it really we think it comes down to one play, and often it does. But do something better earlier in a game, and you're not going to be in that position anyway.
True. But in any event, David Vanterpool, not correct to do what he did, and so the fine I think is very much appropriate. It's not we can't just say oh well he did it, get over it, because really he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done that. And I will say in his defense, at least it wasn't like he saw a player running down the floor and tripped him, or saw the player coming and then reached out and hit. Like, it was just a quick reaction where he probably did it and went, "Oh no, oh god, what did I do?"
It was funny because it was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
You can play. It's all over the place on social media. You can look it up. If you probably just go on Twitter and search Vanderpool, you'll probably get a million copies of it. But yeah, I was like, "What are you thinking?" I mean, it was similar to in the bubble. Do you remember Celtics Raptors? Nick Nurse was a mile out of the coach's box, hanging out all the way deep in the corner, and wearing a gray shirt, and the Celtics passed to him and went out of bounds, and was like, "Wait, why is he even there?"
Right.
Like, I mean, it's just, but I don't think we're going to see coaches getting deflections become the new defensive strategy for defending the corner three.
That's going to be the new stat that we're tracking, coach deflections.
Right? Yeah. That's going to get pricey, that strategy.
You mentioned sometimes a game hinging on somebody missing a layup or something like that. So with that, let me transition into talking about Russell Westbrook. He had some comments recently. So Westbrook, in the last game against the Indiana Pacers, which the Lakers somehow found a way to lose, Westbrook got benched for the final almost 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. This is something that over on Lakers Nation we've been talking about a lot heading into the game. Is it time to finally make that change? Westbrook has this he's got this habit of missing big shots late in games, at least this season anyway, and we've also seen some costly turnovers. Now, he's done much better on the turnovers in the last few weeks, but Frank Vogel went ahead and benched him for the final 4-ish minutes of that game. The Lakers lost anyway, didn't result in getting a win. And then afterwards, Westbrook did not talk to the media. He did give an interview to Adrian Wojnarowski today, basically explaining that he was disappointed that he wasn't back in the game, but he was more frustrated that they lost than anything else, and that him leaving without talking to the media, he was actually asked by the Lakers organization to not talk to the media. Maybe they guessed some of the questions that were going to be coming his way, but in any event, he was upset that he had been characterized as having stormed off. And he said that was indeed not the case. So, interesting situation. We'll see where things go from here. But for the Lakers and for Frank Vogel, they're in a situation where they have to win games regardless of what it looks like when they win, regardless of whatever it takes, whoever needs to be on the floor in order to win a game, that's what they need to do. And if that means benching Russell Westbrook, it appears like that's now a line that they are willing to cross.
Yeah, I think, I know you've spent a lot of time on it, and you guys are closer to it than I would ever be. So check out that coverage on Lakers Nation. But for my thing is, you're 22 and 23.
Mhm.
Nothing can really be off the table
Yep.
at this point. It needs to all be out there of, if this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do. It's kind of, I think of this similar to, we're playing LeBron James at the 5. Like, is that what anybody wants? No, of course not. But it's what we need to do because that's what we think is best to win games. I will also say too is, I'm not going to say Russ might not have made a few plays in that final 5 minutes or so of that game to help them win, because he may have. But the reality is they basically traded points the rest of the way in that game. I want to say they were down 7 or something, and they lost by 7. I know it was 10-10 was the scoring for both the Pacers and the Lakers after Westbrook was taken out of the game.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not like you can look at it and be like, oh man, he was out. Look how great we were. We made this huge comeback that just fell short. That didn't happen. It also isn't, you don't have the ammo to say, well, taking him out, see what it ruined everything and we fell completely apart. I think the reality is this is probably much like, if you'll believe some reports, Frank Vogel's coaching status, it's probably a game by game thing.
Yep.
Where it is, all right, if he's going good, you keep him in. If he's not going so good and you've got, I don't know, you've got Austin Reeves is cooking, you play Austin Reeves. Because there's just, you don't, this has now gone past the point of you don't need to have him out there if he's not playing well. Whereas like LeBron has the status of, LeBron can be 2 for 10 from 3 in a game, and you're still going to draw up that final play for him to have the ball.
Right.
Russ, we're probably past that point, at least for right now, and my guess too is, knowing Russ's history, it would not surprise me if we see him come out. I think they play tonight, right?
They play the Magic tonight.
Well, it's the Magic, so that maybe isn't the best example, but let's just use it anyway. He may come out and have one of those 40-point triple doubles where he's just a dominant machine, because we see that sometimes with him. When you challenge him, then it's like, oh, you don't want me to shoot jumpers? Fine. I'm going to take it to the basket every single time. And then people go into, well, why can't he do this every night? Well, because he's old and he can't do that every night. He doesn't have that anymore. But yeah, I mean, I have no issues with this. I continue to think this is all leading to not good stuff for anybody. Probably Frank Vogel ultimately gets fired and becomes a mess. I think Russ's comments to Woj were fine. I think of course, this was written, so we don't know the tone.
Could have been much worse.
He could have complained and said, Vogel sucks and they don't respect me and all this other stuff. And he basically said, hey, it happened. I'm disappointed, but I'm more mad we lost. And that's probably the best attitude you're going to get out of somebody, even if there's a little covering being done there. But I mean, it's, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah. He said his focus is on trying to win games moving forward. Also say that, so Frank Vogel, it got out that he had permission from management to do this. And in general, it's kind of a weird vibe. Like, why should a coach have to go to management to get permission to manage their players? But you have to remember the amount of assets the Lakers gave up in order to get Russell Westbrook, the perception around the NBA. If he does get benched, what this means, this is going to be a big story. The entire organization will have to deal with it, right? So in this specific situation, him making a decision to bench a player, it's more than like if, say, Austin Reeves or THT or whoever, right, is not having a good game and so they doesn't play in the fourth. This is going to be a bigger story than that. And also say that in this game, it wasn't just, oh, Westbrook is terrible, I can never play him in the fourth quarter. It was very specific. Westbrook was told, don't let Karis LeVert go right. This is our scheme. And whether that's the right or wrong scheme, this is what we're trying to do. And he didn't execute that. And so Frank Vogel said, okay, well then I'm going to put in somebody who will do what I want them. Now, again, Karis LeVert went off anyway. It didn't end up mattering. But that was the game plan. Vogel saw that Westbrook was not following that game plan, and so he benched him. And so in my mind, from a coaching perspective, I've got no problem with that.
Nope. I think there are literally 3 players on that roster that he'd have a conversation with the front office about if he benches them. It's LeBron, Russ, and AD.
Yep.
Anybody else is good. And we also don't know, did Vogel go to Rob Pelinka and crew and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking I may need to do? And did they say, fine, you've got our full support? Or did they go to him and say, hey, if you need to do this, like, you've got our support? We don't know how that played out. We probably won't know how that plays out until, probably a year later after all this is, resolved and sorted or whatever. Well, maybe that story will come out then. That's how those things tend to go.
Rob,
Hey, let's stick with the Pacers. For a minute here.
Let's get to that.
Domantas Sabonis, after we last recorded, I think the last things we talked about was, hey, maybe the Kings are interested in trading for him. And then he went out and sprained his ankle. And sounds like he stayed in that game to finish off that game against the Lakers, if I remember correctly. And I think he hit a couple big shots late.
He did indeed.
But then right after that game, Rick Carlisle said he's got what's probably a pretty significant ankle injury. We did not hear anything beyond that, except he did not play last night on Thursday night against the Golden State Warriors, nor did Miles Turner, nor did Karis LeVert, nor did Malcolm Brogdon, nor did TJ Warren, who would have been their starting small forward. So there's their entire preseason starting five, as well as TJ McConnell, who would have been their sixth man. Top six players out for the Indiana Pacers. And they went in and kicked the Warriors' tails. It doesn't even make sense. No. This is absolutely one of the most improbable wins.
What was the over I can under? Remember. It was like 13. I think it was minus 13 going into the game for the Warriors.
Yeah.
And I probably would have bet the Warriors side on that.
Yeah. And when I say kick their tails, they did not blow them out. It went into overtime.
But they won.
And they won. But they won. And it's here's the guys here's was the Pacers starting five. Goga Batadze, Torrey Craig, Justin Holiday, Chris Duarte, and Kiefer Sykes. The people watching our show, I know you love the NBA. If you're watching NBA Front Office Show, you're probably pretty deep into how much you like the NBA. I bet some of the people who's Kiefer Sykes?
Yes.
Who is this guy? And, and he played pretty good. The Warriors' attitude in this game literally seemed like from the jump of, all right, we're here. Give us our win and let us go home. And the Pacers' attitude was, we're going to make you work for it. And then it reminded me of when you're watching the NCAA tournament and the double-digit seed. It's all of a sudden the under 8 timeout and they're still in it. And it's all of a sudden the better team is like, oh crap, they're not going away.
Right.
They're here and this is going to be a fight the rest of the way. I mean, cats off to the Pacers with this group. And, and I don't think it changes anything. I don't think they look at it and say, yeah, we can trade all those guys. Look, we don't need them.
We're better without them. No.
Yeah, we're better with, that gets a little too crazy, but I do think the Pacers are sitting here now, they're coming off two good wins in a row for them. And, at least you're feeling a little good about this. Chris Duarte, great in that game. Their other first round pick, Isaiah Jackson, he played really well in kind of his first extended minutes. And the Warriors played awful. I mean, they were just absolutely rotten and just, they threw the ball all over the gym. I mean, they had 21 turnovers. Like, that's just, you're not going to win games, doing that kind of stuff if the opponent is engaged and into it. So just, we don't do the game coverage like we were doing before, but this is this one deserved it because it's just kind of funny.
Absolutely, and we'll see what this Sabonis ankle injury does heading into the trade deadline. Like, what if Sabonis is out through the trade deadline, and Turner is out through the trade deadline? What happens with the Pacers? I mean, you can certainly still trade these guys, but our team's going to be as willing to give up stuff if they're currently injured? We'll have to see what that looks like. The Nets, speaking of trades, the Nets are going to try to find a new home for Paul Millsap, someplace where he can get some more minutes. It shouldn't be tough to find a deal there, but certainly Millsap hasn't quite provided what the Nets were hoping that he would. And I mean, I guess good on them to honor his request here and try to find a different place for him to play, maybe where he can play a little bit of a bigger role.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point now with the Nets. He was inactive last night, which is probably likely to be his status now moving forward that this has come out. But they are starting two-way players and late first-round picks and those kind of things with guys out up front. And Millsap still couldn't crack past those guys. So I think the Nets are really kind of looking at it as, hey, it's just not going to be a thing here for us. I think it's clear now too. He is very much a 5 now. I don't think he has the foot speed to play out on the perimeter as a 4 anymore. I just don't think that's workable. But some team will say, we could use a big.
Sure.
We can use one more guy. He's on a minimum deal, so very easily movable. And I'm guessing the Nets may want to do this without even anything coming back. So that way they can open up a roster spot, which either will be helpful for them at the trade deadline, or what they can do then is convert one of their two-way players, Kessler Edwards or David Duke Jr., who have both played very well for them at times. But the reality is Edwards is starting, and you get overly reliant on a two-way player, you're in trouble because they're not playoff eligible.
Right. So
if this becomes a situation where you think at all either Edwards or Duke might be a playoff guy for you, then you have to get a roster spot and get them converted over. So yeah, my guess is this will come down to probably closer to the trade deadline, and then some team that's hey, we could use a big. We'll say, hey, what do you think? Can we make this happen? He was close to going to Chicago and Golden State, I think, were his two teams, if not Brooklyn. And Golden State's a little harder to find the easy roster spot. I don't know that they have one, but Chicago, they've got a cut they could probably make and say, yeah, let's make this work.
Sure. Yeah, I think he'll wind up somewhere.
Sure.
Part of the Cam Reddish deal had Solomon Hill going to the Knicks, and as expected, the Knicks have waived Hill. This was just, the Knicks agreed as part of the deal to eat this salary from Solomon Hill, and now, again, not a surprise, he's out for the season with an injury, so this is what we expected to happen here, and Solomon Hill will rehab, and then he'll try to land with another team next offseason.
Yep, and we're hearing Cam Reddish may make his debut this weekend for the Knicks. Sounds like he's getting close there, and they could use. They can definitely use him, but the Knicks they've been struggling a little bit recently. So anybody who can come in and give them a little extra pop, I think would be very welcome.
RJ Hampton, just to round out some of our news for the Orlando Magic, out 2 to 4 weeks dealing with an MCL sprain and a bone bruise. 2 to 4 weeks, that raises my eyebrows a bit there. It wouldn't surprise me if it's longer, because these are the kinds of injuries that can linger. I hope it's not. I hope that he gets back as quickly as possible. But just kind of be aware that these are the kinds of injuries, particularly when you hear such a wide range, 2 to 4 weeks, like it could wind up being longer. That it's just gonna depend on the progression here. And sometimes these are the things that can take a while ask Kendrick Nunn, right? These things take a while.
Yeah, and the thing that sucks is Hampton was one of the few Magic players. Tim and Franz Wagner, I think, were the only two that had been available for most games this year. A lot of other guys had been in and out of the lineup, all season long. And Hampton was getting minutes, and that's what he needs. On the plus side, it sounds like Markelle Fultz may be getting close-ish, maybe sometime in the next week or two. The reports here in Orlando, he's been getting into contact practices and the like. They've even, a player's getting kind of close when they let the reporters in at the end of practice and they see that player out there doing stuff. And there's been some snippets of that shared. So he sounds like he's getting close. Still no word on Jonathan Isaac. But yeah, it's just anytime a young player on a rebuilding team who needs minutes is out, it's just time lost. It's just valuable development time that's gone by the wayside.
Which means that now if Franz Wagner is the one guy left that is getting regular minutes, or that has been available for most of the season, that means the Magic are now in an only Franz scenario.
That's it.
To steal your pun.
Just like I'm an only Franz account on Twitter. Perfect. Well done.
All right. Keith, I know we have a PSA to do on the trade deadline. Do we want to squeeze that one in here today?
Yeah, let's do this really quick. And we're probably going to repeat this. Guys, follow your newsbreakers. Yes. If you have to, set up a list on Twitter. Put your notifications on for Woj and Shams. You're going to have the fake accounts that are fake Shams, fake Woj. We've all been gone.
For the blue check mark.
Yep, look for the blue check mark. Go to their account if something seems off. Like, click on them and go look for the tweet yourself. We've all been caught. I've been caught too. Generally it's someone retweets and I'm like, oh crap, and then I retweet, and in somewhere some 14-year-old is laughing and thinks they're funny. The other ones, though, that are kind of worse, because most of those get caught pretty quick, those fake ones,
Yeah.
are these accounts where they've got 500 followers somehow. A lot of times these accounts were opened a month ago. And all of a sudden they're breaking major news.
Sources. Right.
Yeah, sources tell me Ben Simmons is being traded to, San Francisco 49ers and we'll play football now. Like it's like, oftentimes it's, crazy stuff.
But it's stuff that's close enough to where people go, ooh, that's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's built off others reporting of, we just talked a lot about Simmons to the Kings, maybe. So it's Ben Simmons being traded to the Kings. Sources tell me. This is not a gatekeeping thing, because neither Trevor or I believe in the gatekeeping that goes on in the media quite a bit. But just if it's that big, Shams, Woj, Chris Haynes, Mark Stein, they're going to get it. Maybe a local Philly writer or a local Kings writer, maybe the one who actually gets it and, gets it out there. It's pretty rare that one of these comes out. As I said to Trevor, I'm okay with dismissing the one time out of a million that one of these random people has actual news and I miss it. And good for them, because sometimes that's how people, get their bump and make their living off it. But just be careful where you're getting your news. And the other thing, we don't need every report sent to the two of us every 5 seconds. Hey, have you heard this?
Is this true? Yeah.
Yeah. Is this true? One is chances are we don't know. That's not the world we live in necessarily. And the reality is the answer most likely is no, that's not a real thing. So just, a little thing there. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah. So I've got a few things. I'm going to produce a little PSA for maybe Instagram or something like that, a very short version. And just here's what I've got. So you've got to check, like Keith has been saying, check your source. Who is it coming from? Is that person someone reputable? But then you also have to follow the trail. So, for example, there was a post that was going around on Instagram that stated something and then cited the work of somebody who is legit, said it was coming from a legitimate source. Go back and look. Did that person actually say that? Because don't just assume that because this account that you've never heard of is saying this person said that they actually said it. I found a lot of stuff in that realm that has been completely wrong, where they're just attaching someone legit's name to it to make it sound better and get themselves more followers, more clicks, whatever it is they're looking for. You'll also find people who will twist things so that the headline will read whatever it is. You want to call it clickbait, right? But who the headline will read what they want it to say, even if the actual subject, the actual quote or whatever they're getting says the opposite. People are unscrupulous with this stuff. So be careful with that. Be careful who it is that you're listening to right now this time of year, because this is when you get a lot of accounts popping up, just trying to get a lot of followers, trying to get clout, if that's what you want to call it. And they will put out there whatever they think is going to get that interest. They want you to believe that they've got inside sources. And for me, again, like he said, sometimes every once in a while, one of these might be right. But most of the time I look at it and think, okay, why does this random egg avatar have information that none of the big guys have? The guys who do this professionally for a living don't have, and this random account does? You always have to be skeptical with stuff like that. And then from there, it is lying season. So when you see contradictory information, don't assume that means, oh, this person is full of it. We've seen reports conflict. We've seen the Kings will trade De'Aaron Fox. We've seen, no, the Kings won't trade De'Aaron Fox. What you have to do is read between the lines a little bit and think, who does this benefit? Where is this information coming from? Who does it benefit? Because different sides will put out different versions of their story. So you have to think a little bit deeper. Don't take everything at face value. Enjoy it. This is a great time of year. This is one of my favorite times of the year because there's all these possibilities flying around and it's a lot of fun. But what winds up happening is when you believe the wrong people, when you listen to the wrong people, and you don't do your due diligence in terms of looking at these sources, you can wind up getting very disappointed when a deal that you thought is going to happen doesn't wind up happening.
There it is. And that's when people get mad too. It's like, why did, GMX not make this trade? I was told, that this offer was out there. And it's like, you were told that by, Joe 5 followers who, made that up. So Yeah, it's no, we're there.
Yes.
We're in complete agreement on this. So, guys, enjoy it, have fun, go crazy. It's, a big part of it. Just, take 2 seconds to look at where it's coming from and like,
Just be careful.
this is weird. Absolutely.
And we will do a live question and answer soon. We
Yeah.
haven't picked an exact date, but I'm talking about within the next few days. We'll do a live Q&A. We'll go over a lot of trade stuff with everybody. We'll take questions and comments. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be coming. We're here to help people get through the trade deadline and get through it without falling for some of the crap that's out there, frankly.
Yep. And you just clinched one of the two of us is going to retweet a fake account within the next few days and feel like a complete dummy.
That's right. It happens to all of us, but just there's steps that you can take to try to minimize your chances of being had in a situation like this.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. Thanks for coming in here, and make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications as well, and follow us over on the podcast version, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Follow us there as well. Till next time, stay safe and see ya.